TNT for farm purposes. What's the best way to handle it? Should we do dispenser dispensing? Should we dupe it like we can on Java? Should we just make a wither blast chamber? Oh shoot. Should we just make a wither blast chamber? Those are all fine options. We've got options for those, you know, especially if people don't want to dupe TNT. But what about an iron axe? Okay, so before we get started, as always, world download is going to be down in the video description. I'll throw some schematics down there as well for what we're going to look at. But what is the purpose of what we're looking at? So I do have tree farms that use a wither blast chamber. I've got a video for that. I'll link that down in the description. There are plenty of tree farms that use TNT duping. In my opinion, because we don't have renewable sand yet, and since Mojang has also said that they will support this until they come up with renewable sand, I am fine with TNT duping. And then I also have a video on some blast chambers that use really efficient use of the TNT. I'll link that down in the video description as well. But wither cages can be unpredictable depending on the server architecture you're on, and if you don't exactly know what you're doing with those. And sometimes TNT duping is just flat out disabled, or you just personally given that challenge, and you don't want to do a whole blast chamber setup just to get some logs out of it. Now, you can do the thing where you just plant some trees in a row, grow them with bone meal, climb to the top, chop them down, rinse, repeat. Nothing wrong with that, but I like doing AFK stuff. I like just being able to click a couple of buttons, go to sleep, wake up in the morning, and boom, I have chest full of resources. So for those of you who didn't know, there are several ways to dupe TNT. There's some very popular ones, the most popular being duping it with just slime and a coral fan. You just actually drop down the TNT, and then you control where that's going to blow up. The one that I've been using lately in the Dirt Cheap series, this one by Afferent Neuron. This one actually just dupes TNT using the snow from the snowman. Another very popular one, because it doesn't use any entities, is just this observer-based duper. And this one is set up that it actually just drops down right in that range that we need. So that's what you do. You push the logs over to where the TNT is going to blow up, and then you blow them up. These are the blast chambers from the Dirt Cheap blast chamber video. Again, link will be down in the video description. So here's my version that's 200 to 220 logs per TNT. So if you're just dispensing TNT out, this is the Dirt Cheap adaptation of Mango's blast chamber version, which is 240 per TNT. And these obviously make really efficient use of that TNT, because that's a lot of blocks per TNT, but it does mean that you need to get the logs into a single item stream. And that can sometimes be tricky, especially if you don't know what you're doing. I have, again, some designs for tree farms in that video using these blast chambers. But what if you don't want to use any TNT at all? And we're going to be looking at these 4 design concepts here. So these are what will be done in the schematics, down in the world download as well, that you can come check out. I'm using a few different options, and basically with the end goal of getting planks. First one being the most simple, because this was just a version for bamboo. Once we got bamboo turning into planks and logs, so you can make bamboo planks just out of any bamboo farm you've got. You can do this version that dispenses with bone meal to grow up. You could use a version that just has observers taking off and you just let it run. You could use a flying machine version, whatever. Bamboo is a nice, easy way to do it without any TNT. Then you get planks for making your pistons or your chests or your signs or whatever you need it for. This is kind of the reason that I've been using a lot of the bamboo signs and bamboo buttons and stuff like that in my recent versions, just because this is so nice to just set up these little AFK setups and you're done. However, unless you make it giant, the rates aren't really great, and your only option is bamboo. Then that's the only way you can do it. So let's look at these other ones. First, we're going to look at the nether trees. You can do either warped or crimson. Then we're going to look at some oak logs using the azalea setup. And then we have a version that unfortunately only gets you stripped logs from a few different types of trees. We'll get to why that is in a bit, but let's start off with the nether trees. So these two over here are the same, just that this one has been run so you can see it filled up. This one is not. But the concept of this is, because nether trees don't have that limit of stuff being in the way when they grow, we have much more option for what we can do. And so what the whole idea is we're going to grow a tree, then we're going to drop the player on top of the logs and slowly drop them down while they chop up the logs, and get this out of the way, get them back into the water stream to get them back up top. So you can see here we have a little bit of redstone kind of compacted here, and what we're doing is this block right here is going to get bone mealed. So it's going to get bone mealed from both the bottom and above, just to make sure that we can get those plants growing. And if it does turn back into netherrack, that we actually get that turned back into the nylium that we need. So the kind of nylium you get will be based on what nylium block is here. This block of nylium is just here to be able to replenish this block. Like a lot of other nether tree farm designs, it's going to keep spamming this with bone meal if it can, and when it gets a fungus, then it's actually going to be able to grow up into a tree. At the point that it's grown into a tree, we're going to get our signal here that's going to go up our tower, where our player will be standing here facing down. You can see that they're not actually aiming at anything, they're aiming at air. So if you have your button held, that's fine. It's going to release the player, it's going to pull this out of the way. The player is going to slide over to this honey. We have this trapdoor here for axes, we'll get to that in a bit. And then the player can just slide down the honey, so whatever height grows, because we also want to make sure we're not just killing the player. So whatever height grows, you'll just slowly fall down until you land on top and then chop the logs down. Once the player falls through there, again, this will be out of the way. This is actually going to allow it to stay open a little bit extra after we break that log. The player is going to fall down into the next layer of the water stream where he gets sent back up. And then that process is going to repeat. Spam this with bone meal, spam that with bone meal, and luckily we don't really waste much bone meal, because the only thing that actually uses up bone meal is, one, growing some kind of plant up here, and two, if you get fungus up here. Now I would have liked to have compact this just a little bit more so the player was spending less time in the water streams. However, as you can see here, you need the space so that it doesn't actually grow into anything, because yeah, these wart blocks actually replace water in a bubble column, and then you just get stuck in the bubble column and just sit there and you'd have like 4 logs. What do you fucking do? Now this setup allows for either using mending or using a replenishment of axes. Now the axes were kind of a pain in the butt, because the thing is, in Minecraft we have this thing called pickup priority. So if we're using axe replenishment, we need to make sure that there is always an axe available to the player to be picked up that was created as an item entity before the logs were created as an item entity, so you don't pick up the logs instead, and then you're just sitting there punching logs, really slowing things down. Now, you could also theoretically do that. You could do no mending, you could do no axe replenishment, and just punch logs. You'll still get some. It's just going to be significantly slower. So in this setup, I have it noted here, either you put bottles of enchanting, XP bottles into this dispenser, or you fill it with axes. You do not need both. So here's how you're going to use it with either a player or a carpet bot. I'm going to use a bot for demonstration purposes so we can watch it going around. Like I said, either fill in the axe or the XP input, or if you just really want, just use punch mode. You're going to flick this lever. This is the on-off switch. We're going to see that it's going to start trying to create those trees, and there it did. So now we can see a signal goes through the stem or log, whatever you want to call it, and then actually halts the system so we're not wasting bone meal. We can see it's pulled that block out of the way now, so when we get to that point, we'll actually fall through, and we're ready to start our process. Now, if you are using a bot, make sure that you fill the bot's inventory first. Otherwise, the bot is going to start picking up everything because you are actually going through that stream of logs. Once we're ready with our axe in our main hand, one thing to note is how you keep from dying. So you've either got to use a beacon, which I don't have in this setup, but you put a regen beacon down, or you need to put actual food into the offhand and do the use continuous command or hold your right click. This does mean, once again, you're going to break your axes faster, and you are only going to get strip logs out of this. So if you don't want strip logs, you need a regen beacon, and then you don't need to do the pork chop step. So you either plop down your regen beacon, or you put pork chop or steak or some kind of good food in the offhand and do use continuous. I'm going to show the beacon setup so that we can actually get not strip versions. So I've summoned my bot. I've given him an axe. In this case, I'm just using iron axes, because if you got an iron farm, easy to replenish. You can use diamond axe if you want to get a little bit faster, or like I said, you can do the mending setup with the bottle of enchanting. Your bot or your player is going to be looking straight down, literally straight down, and then we're going to push it into the water stream, or as the player walk into the water stream. You're going to see we have this nice setup to push it into the water stream, suck it up to the top, and in this case I've removed the tree back just so we can see how that's going to turn on. Now that the player is up there, you also want to do the attack continuous. Now he's going to be chopping away. So let's go ahead and go back down. Since we're using a bot, let's turn it back on. Here we go. We have a tree spawn, so now the player gets released along with that axe. That's why we have that trapdoor there, so it's to hold the axe until an actual tree gets grown. You could also just forget to take the bot out of creative mode. But let's try that again. All right, our bot is in there. He's loaded up. He's on attack continuous. He is now in survival mode. Let's turn on and run it. There we go. We got our tree. It's going to release our bot or our player. There we go. Now you can see our items are dropping right there on top of the tree. Going to fall through. All the items come here on top of this hopper. We have this trap door here, so they just kind of stop on top of that hopper and get some time to pick up, because there are going to be some different stacks. There we go. We got another tree. Once again, not very high, so that's why we're dropping it down with honey, so you're not taking fall damage constantly. Any items that do get stuck up there are going to get pushed back into place. And we actually have a hopper minecart that has been zero ticked into this block right here on top of the honey. It's getting sucked back and forth. So any items that do land on there get sucked up by this hopper and then pulled in by this hopper minecart and then sent into our storage system as well. So this hopper minecart is just lined up with this trapdoor right here. You can either rail it into place or you can push the trapdoor into place on top of it. But that's what this piston is for. You basically put down your nylium right here, put down your hopper minecart on top of that honey block, and then just put a button on the side of this, tick it into place, ready to go. But this also does serve the purpose of any blocks that do happen to land on top of here, then get pushed into that hopper minecart. And then they come right down to this output chest. You may have noticed earlier I had the chest up one higher and forgot that I switched this over to a lamp and moved it. Yeah, and that locks the hopper, but all we need to do is just drop it down again. We also do have a system here to sort out the actual unstackables. So that'd be right here, our axes that didn't get used. We want to make sure we can recycle those. So we first have it come through here, and this then sorts out the unstackables. So if it is giving off signal strength 3, that falls in. The only thing we need to worry about with the unstackables is the actual axes. We don't have any other unstackables, so we can just put them all into this dropper tower here, and then we're ready to go. Now, in terms of rates, this is the part where you all probably turn off the video. About 800 stems or logs per hour. Not great in terms of rates, especially considering how many there are out there. It's like 100,000 logs per hour. But again, we are doing this without any TNT whatsoever. So TNT has the advantage of it can just break multiple blocks at a time. We're running around just chopping them. Now, this is with the iron axe. If you actually use a diamond axe or netherite axe, you can kind of up that a little bit. So if you're doing a mending setup, you're going to get a little over 1,000 per hour. But yeah, the iron axe is just significantly slower for chopping stuff. You can see how slow he's going down. So if you get yourself like a diamond axe with efficiency on it, this is again an efficiency-less iron axe. That will take it up above that 1,000 per hour, but it's still not going to be, you know, the new meta in DMC. But this is completely AFKable, so put a bot in there, put a player in there, run it overnight, come back, and you're just going to have stuff in your chest. You can also add on more chests with axes if you want to do iron axes, or, you know, a chest instead of a barrel for XP if you want to do it that way, using the mending setup with like an efficiency 5 diamond axe, stuff like that. Just make sure you are careful with the materials used for this. So the materials were chosen very carefully. Normally I just do yellow concrete as just kind of like my signature or my nice way to see the redstone lines against a nice contrasted background. However, in this case, the bot is actually going to be looking down at some of those blocks while it's chopping. So like this yellow concrete right here, you want to make sure that it is not an axe efficient block right there. So don't put wood under there. I don't know why this block keeps looking like it's breaking with a carpet bot. You can see as soon as it gets to that spot, it's going back to exactly where it was. It's just some weird visual glitch. But yeah, you don't want to put like logs down under here because then it'll just chop out the logs and fall through. And that's pretty much it. You can see he's just going to go through all his cycles and do his thing. Now again, all that's going to happen if you run out of either bottles of XP or the iron axes, whichever way you do, just means it's going to slow it down because now he's going to punch his way through instead of actually chopping his way through. The only thing that's going to stop is if you run out of bone meal, and it's not going to do anything. All that's going to happen is he's just going to sit up top, never having anything grow because you don't have bone meal to grow anything. So that's pretty much it. Like I said, just whichever type of tree you want, whether you want warped or crimson, just change out these nylium blocks right down here, these two here, or whichever type of nylium you want. You really want, you are going to get a good amount of these crimson roots, and you do get one nether warp block from each tree chop. So you could put an item filter on here and just take the logs out and send everything else over to bone meal and recycle back in your bone meal chests. I didn't really do that. It's not really going to be that efficient. It's not going to make it like infinite AFK or anything like that. You still need a supply with bone meal, but you could also just like put a bone meal farm on the end of this to just go into this chest and then boom. I have a great dirt cheap option on my channel. Is it self promo if it's your own channel? So that's another tree version. Now on to the other ones. So let's start off over here. This is using the same concept of dropping the player down on top of a tree. We don't have to really worry about the honey because we can't, because growing azaleas has that rule about what blocks can be within a certain radius. And then on the second hand, azalea trees really only grow to a certain height. They could be a couple blocks below this, but this is really the shape that they grow into. So all we need to do is just make sure that we can drop the player down on top of here, make sure there's no damage, and then they just chop their way down through. We are doing 2 trees this time so that we can alternate back and forth. The nether trees, I didn't really see the point of doing 2 of them because they grow pretty fast. The azaleas can sometimes take a little bit of extra time because first you have to get an azalea bush, and that's a thing. So we just have 2 chambers here that we're going to alternate dropping the player or the bot through. Same concept though, we just have a fence that holds them so that they are looking down into air. They can't actually chop anything until something grows. And then same thing. We're going to pull the rooted dirt out of the way so that the player just drops through the water stream, and then we send them over to the other tower. Now, when I first started doing this, I was just using a stone generator to send in new stone that we would turn into moss and then grow something out on, so that you would actually gather the rooted dirt. Actually, how many times did I say actually? What? So that could still be done by taking this piston out and sending in new stone through this path. But at the end of the day, I mean, it takes up more uses on your axe because it's not a proper axe block type. And, you know, rooted dirt, do we really need rooted dirt? I mean, I don't know. Some people would say they'd want the rooted dirt. So in that case, just all you need to do is just send in a new line of stone each time you grow. So you can take a signal off of this, and each time you get a new tree that grows, then in your dirt block. Actually, it would be after it grows. So you'd want to take your signal actually off of this line right here. So it would be pretty easy. Just come up and over. Send out your signal here to your lava gen and send a new stone instead of this piston. But we're going to do this without that because luckily when we turn this into moss, it doesn't get affected by sticky. But as soon as we grow something, it turns back into rooted dirt. So we can pull it out of the way and the player just drops through. This setup, I did not do the bottle of XP dispense or the iron axe. This setup, we actually added the AFK mending module. I'll add a link down to that in the video description. In this version, I did set it to peaceful when I accidentally spawned a wither. So that's why we don't have it. Normally you have a zombified pigman up here that's drawing in the snowman aggro, all that. But basically you can watch the other video if you want to see more about that. But this will just supply the player with XP that they can pick up to mend the axe. But same idea, we're going to turn this on, it's going to run a clock, and we have this clock set up so that it is going to turn off. It's going to pull our block out of the way right here if both of the trees have grown. And that's what we're using this composter and comparator setup for. So if both of these turn off, this block pulls out of the way, and then the clock sends in no more signal to try and send in any piston pulses or any bone meal or anything like that. And so it just, after it grows 2 trees, if it does that really efficiently, it just leaves it as it is. Same thing as before, we're using when a log grows to determine that there should be a signal that goes through. So that pops that up to take that signal away. So now this side gets enabled. This is basically just kind of an OR gate right here that we're using, you know, whether one of these 2 is on, then keep this down. So if we then also get a log there, we can see that pulls out of the way. Just simply serves the purpose of just saving us a little bit of MSPT, but maybe like 0.1, but mostly bone meal. We have this moss block that is going to get dispensered over and over again. We have this moss block right here that serves as our little cedar block for turning these back into moss and then growing plants on them, either grass or azalea bushes. So we do have 3 bone meal sources here that need to fill. There's the one for this center block, and then there's the one for growing the trees on each side. If you wanted to fill this up or have this feeding from, you know, bone meal farm, I did extend these out a little bit further than they originally were. So all you need to do is just, you know, add a couple of hopper lines to be able to reach it there. And then you can easily get around that column and just, you know, send them across the line this way. But same concept. We have our on-off switch right here. So I'm going to get my bot ready. I'm going to get his iron axe swapped out for our mending and unbreaking axe. Again, we need him to look straight down. So we just give him the command to look straight down, or spawn him in while you're looking straight down, not tilted, straight down. And send him into the water stream. And if you're a player, you'd first turn on the on-off switch and then go into the water stream. And turn on the on-off switch. You see the clock is going to enable. There we go, we've grown one. But he's waiting over this one, so we're waiting for this one to grow. Now we've seen one grow there. We can see this clock is still running, but nothing over here is running anymore. The player's been dropped down, so now we just need to turn on our attack continuous. And we're ready to start chopping. Same thing, we have these hoppers with these trapdoors on there to make sure that we can get any items that bunch up, because you are going to get some things like like the seeds and the moss carpet and those types of things that are going to go into there as well. So we want to make sure, because there's multiple different item types, they don't just flow past and into there. Now, same thing on this one. You want to make sure you have a regen beacon so that the player doesn't need to use food constantly and strip the logs as it goes down. That's also important because, as you may have heard, there is a small chance that the player is going to take a little bit of damage. We dropped this as low as we could, but sometimes the tree is just that darn short or just grows that far over to the side. So we just make sure that we can recover from that little bit of damage. As far as rates, unfortunately, kind of same thing as the other one. Not really that great. You're looking at about 700 logs per hour because daily trees don't really grow that many logs, and some of them are going to just be off to the side and out of the way and whoop-de-freaking-do. So again, it is one of the concepts of you set it and forget it. Then everything comes back in our output chest. Again, you could hook up an item filter to actually sort some of this back into bone meal. But this one is going to be a little less bone meal efficient than the nether tree one, just because of the pattern that we're using to grow the moss and the things on top of the moss. So definitely want to make sure you have some bone meal to resupply this if you want to run this for a longer extended period of time. If you just want to add on more chests, just make sure you keep them on this level, this Y level right here, same as the first log in the tree, because these trees do have a rule. That's why we have strip logs up here for the tunnel. Because anything other than a log will impact the growth of those trees, and you want to grow. So just have it come out to the side and go. And again, normally when you're ready to run this, you turn off your lava for the XP module, and your XP would drop in right here, where it has access to get to the player or bot either through this way or through this way. So each time around, it'll pick up its XP and mend its axe. So those are two setups that can get us the plain logs. Finally, we're going to look at this version that gets you stripped logs. And here's the reason why. Because for birch, spruce, jungle, things like that, you actually need the player to place down the saplings. So you have to have an axe in one hand, you have to have the sapling in the other, you have to be using the sapling, and that means that you're going to strip the logs. Now, if you are using carpet, you can get around this by turning off the option that axes will strip logs. I personally use carpet, so it's an option for me, but I didn't want to include it as that's what you got to do. You can still get strip logs out of this and turn them into the planks you need, but if you need the plain logs, sorry, but you're back to one of the other options we discussed before. So we talked about why it's going to get strip logs, what you can do about that, but you know what? If all you're after is the planks, or you're fine with strip logs, then this still works. But again, it's just a design without TNT. There are tons of easy universal tree farms that'll just use some TNT, get you better rates, all that kind of stuff. First thing to know is this one was designed with a pickaxe replacement system. You could easily just leave this empty and just put, a dispenser for bottles of XP in here and be just fine. And you're also going to need to supply yourself with saplings. So this is a chest. We are going to get all of our saplings growing into trees, but at the same time, you need to resupply with saplings. So you're going to want to put your saplings in your offhand. and your axe in your main hand. And then you probably want to fill your inventory just with whatever you've got. This one, if you are going to run for long periods, you are going to need a regen beacon on it, just because of the fact that you already have saplings in your offhand. You can't eat saplings. Sorry to all the vegetarians out there. All we need to do to get it started is we're going to step on this pressure plate right up against the honey. We're using the honey because of that hitbox size, so we can actually step into the hitbox a little bit. What we're going to use this water column here to actually push us up and then bring us back down, since we're not going to be landing directly on top. This way we don't have to worry about falling down depending on the tree heights and all that, so we can just keep it nice this way and stay out of the way. But it does mean that you're going to need to aim perfectly. So you want to stand up against this honey block and then up against this wall. So I'm pushing right into this corner as far as I can. That honey block will get pushed out of the way. We have water sources that'll get cleared up there so that when we push in the soul sand, it'll turn back into a bubble column. But this pressure plate is what we're going to be standing on. And then in order to activate it, we need to turn on this switch. But before we do, you're going to need to plan on the direction you look at this. So you're going to be wanting to look over at the side, because if you look at the center, as you come down, when you plant that sapling, you're just going to break it. And then you're going to just keep doing that over and over again. So you need to actually make sure that you're facing the side, because you can see, you can place the sapling and then just break your dirt. All right, let's get that dirt punched back in place. Yeah, so as I was saying, you need to make sure you're looking at it that way, and then also at a down angle, because as you saw from my creative mode, even when we're in survival, we're going to start punching away at that dirt. We don't want that. So we need to also get low enough that we're actually looking at this minecart that's been zero ticked into there. So this hopper minecart, we're not trying to chop the dirt anymore. The game recognizes that it's in our path, but we're too far away from it to reach it, so we're good to go. In earlier designs, I also had a hopper here so that you're actually opening the inventory of the hopper, but not really necessary. So that means as you're coming down, you can see I was able to plant it, and then I didn't break the dirt block because that got in my way. So again, I'm going to go into survival to do this. I'm going to step on the pressure plate right against the honey, right up against the wall, so right in this corner. And then I'm going to make sure that I'm looking at just the right angle. Turn it on. I can plant my first sapling, and then in order to get it started, all I need to do is just go up in the water stream a little bit. That's going to give the pressure plate enough time not to react. And we're just holding down the left and right mouse buttons here. So, like I was saying, first you get in here, and if you are using massive mods, make sure you turn your fast place off. Your fast place will screw up your placement there. I'm going to go into survival, get in, push up against the honey and the wall, standing on the pressure plate, turn on the switch, and then I'm going to make sure that I'm aiming, and I'm going to go up slightly in the water tower. That's going to kick it off, send me to the top, and now we can hold down our left and right mouse buttons. There we go. You see I plant it, I get shot up, and then I'm going to start coming back down and chopping them. The ones that land on that dirt block, they're going to be fine. When the next tree grows, it's going to push it off to the side to land in a hopper, so don't need to worry about that. In fact, I think you could probably get away without having that hopper minecart in there. I just like to try and pick up as many of those entities as possible. But yeah, you can see how it's working now that I've gone into free cam and stepped out of the way a little bit. You can see as soon as I come down, I'm going to plant that tree. And then that soul sand is going to push me up. We're getting a new sapling up top. And each time it's going to send a new axe over to see if I need to pick up a new axe. Now we don't have to worry as much about pickup priority on this one, because we can see all the blocks are going to be over here to the side. These double piston extenders here actually go ahead and break the leaves out of the way, so we don't have to worry about coming down and breaking the leaves while we go. We don't have to waste time with that. We get a few saplings back. Again, it's not much. You could probably add more series onto this to get more saplings out of it, but if you're doing like spruce, it's still not going to be enough to fully maintain it. So that's why I still have that input system there. But by all means, if you want to just mirror this over on the other side as well, I think we can fit that in there. You know what? In the spirit of saying I kind of goofed something up, I'm going to go ahead and actually do that right now. There we go. Now we'll get more. Perfect. I'm just going to clear out these spruce and show that we can also do birch. Again, these do need to be logs. They don't need to be strip logs. I just use strip logs so they were kind of easier to identify what's supposed to be in there. But again, this is so that the tree still thinks that an area has an area to grow, because it counts air and logs as only valid areas to grow, and we need that space for the spruce. We can get away with it without the birch, but I think when I do a farm that doesn't do spruce, I hear a lot of complaints. So yeah. So I got my birch in my offhand. Again, you just make sure that this chest back here actually has the birch saplings to feed you now. You could also, if you want, add an item filter down here that will take saplings out of these chests, or have a hopper line that comes out the back that will then suck it out of the chest and send it right back into there. But I figure pretty much at that point, again, we're not going to get enough saplings to keep this going. We might get barely enough with birch because birch drops a lot, but spruce jungle, definitely not. So same thing, I'm going to go into survival, step up against the honey and the wall on top of the pressure plate there, turn it on, get aimed just right so I'm looking at the edge of the block, but also the hopper minecart, go up in the water, and then right click, left click, make sure I have my fast place off. There we go. That tripped me up there last time. And now holding my right click and right click and left click. We're ready to start harvesting. If you want to actually get those leaves as well, you can see I just broke that leaf. You can also throw Silk Touch on your axe. Why not? The regen beacon is going to keep us from starving to death. We're not taking any damage because we're just using the water stream. Again, we do have to have a little bit of efficiency on this axe. We can't exactly use the iron axes like last time, because your mining speed inside the water is not so great. Even if you have aqua affinity, you got to be touching the ground in order for it to really have an impact. But this way, with just a little bit of efficiency, this is an efficiency 1 axe, you know, nice and easy. As I was saying, if this isn't a video, after I'm done with this recording and running it through rendering, I'm going to run this through its normal carpet bot testing over probably about 15 or so hours on this one. Big farms I do for like 40 hours, but I think something like this after 15 hours is pretty well to do to know what's going on there. But that's going to wrap it up. So again, world download will be the empty version of this, and then the empty version of that, as well as empty version there. I will put schematics down there of these 3 tree farm designs. I don't think we really need a schematic of just the bamboo farms. They're a dime a dozen. But if you really want to grab it, world downloads down there. Links for these TNT setups are also going to be down in the video description, so check that out. So this was just kind of a few ideas of how we can get around without TNT. Again, if your mindset is just do the grind, by all means, play the game how you want to play the game. That's why it's a sandbox game, and why features should stay sandbox content driven. There's no shade in that whatsoever. No, it's no slinky. Nope, not at all. Just like I've got something going on behind that message there, you may have something going on in your life too. And if things are not okay right now, just remember, it's okay not to be okay. You don't have to put on a fake smile. You don't have to worry about trying to keep your chin up when you just feel like you want to hang your head for the day. It's okay not to be okay. Don't beat yourself up for feeling that way. But try and keep your chin up. Things will get better, I promise you. Don't do anything you can't undo. And I will catch you in the next one. Have a good one. Bye.